The moment burned itself into my memory like a scar. It was supposed to be an ordinary Saturday morning. My wife, Elena, had just returned from a week-long assignment, still in her navy blue jacket with the badge clipped at her hip. She carried herself with that quiet dignity I had always admired. A woman who had served her country with precision and honor for years in a federal law enforcement role she rarely spoke about outside of work. We were unloading groceries from the back of the truck when the shrill sound of Karen's voice cut through the calm like a siren. She marched down the sidewalk, hips swaying with self-importance, sunglasses perched on her nose like she was a celebrity caught in the act. "Oh, would you look at that?" she crowed, loud enough for the entire block to hear. "Flashing a fake badge now. Are we trying to play police? That's a crime. You know." The bags of groceries in Elena's arms stilled. I could feel the air shift as neighbors poked their heads out from porches, curiosity written across their faces. Karen had once again found a stage, and my wife was her target. Elena's lips tightened, but she stayed calm. She didn't react to insults easily. Her training had made her steady. But Karen wasn't done. She strutted closer, jabbing a finger toward Elena's hip. "I'm the HOA president, and I'll have you arrested for impersonating a federal officer. Imagine the shame of being caught red-handed in front of your whole community." Her laughter was sharp and cruel, echoing across the quiet street. The neighbors chuckled nervously, unsure whether to believe her or not. I stepped forward, my chest heaving with fury, ready to unleash every ounce of anger I felt. But Elena's hand brushed my arm, steady and grounding. "Let her talk," she whispered, her voice calm as a lake before a storm. So I stood back and watched as Karen puffed herself larger, mistaking silence for victory. The truth was Elena had faced war zones, had stared down armed men twice her size, had testified in courtrooms where lives hung in the balance. And here was Karen, a woman whose battlefield was a neighborhood newsletter, daring to call her a fraud. It was almost laughable, except I wasn't laughing. My jaw ached from clenching so hard. Karen wasn't satisfied with her performance yet. She whipped out her phone and began dialing with theatrical fury. "Yes. 911. I'd like to report a woman pretending to be law enforcement," she said, her voice syrupy sweet as though she were doing her civic duty. "Yes. She's right here, threatening the neighborhood." She paused, glaring at Elena. "Oh, don't you worry. The police will be here any second, and you'll be in cuffs. We don't tolerate liars in this community." That was when Elena moved. With calm precision, she set the grocery bags on the ground, unhooked the badge from her jacket, and stepped forward into the circle of gathering neighbors. Her voice was clear, strong, commanding without ever being raised. "This badge," she said, holding it high for all to see, "is not fake. It is issued by the Department of Homeland Security." Gasps rippled through the crowd. Karen's smirk faltered, but she pushed it back on her face like a mask, waving her hands dismissively. "Don't try to trick us with some novelty trinket," Karen sneered. "Anyone can buy one online. I'm not stupid." But Elena wasn't finished. With deliberate care, she pulled a leather wallet from her jacket pocket and flipped it open to reveal her federal credentials and official ID bearing her name, photograph, and seal. The kind of identification you couldn't fake with a printer. The kind that carried weight heavy enough to silence a courtroom. The silence was absolute. Even the birds seemed to pause. Neighbors leaned closer, eyes wide, mouths falling open. "Mr. Reynolds from across the street whispered, "Good Lord. It's real." Mrs. Jennings clutched her chest. Karen blinked once. Twice. As though her brain was struggling to process what her eyes saw. Her bravado cracked. Her mouth opened, but no words came out. For the first time, the queen of accusations stood mute before the truth. I'll never forget the way Elena's eyes locked on Karen's in that moment. Calm. Steady. Unyielding. She didn't gloat. She didn't shout. She simply let the weight of reality crush the lies. Karen, she said softly, almost kindly, you called the police. When they arrive, they will confirm what this is. And when they ask why you wasted emergency services to slander a federal agent, I hope you have an answer. The crowd murmured louder now, voices rising in outrage. She always does this, someone muttered. Picks fights for attention. Another whispered, didn't she harass the Garcias about their fence last month? The tide was turning, and Karen could feel it. Her cheeks blazed crimson, sweat shining on her forehead. She tried to laugh, but it came out strained and broken. I was just making sure. You know, for the safety of the neighborhood, she stammered. But the neighbors weren't buying it. Not this time. And then the twist Camia car rolled up at the end of the street. Not a patrol cruiser, but a sleek black sedan with government plates. Out stepped a man in a dark suit, his badge flashing as he approached. He wasn't here because of Karen's call. He was Elena's colleague, coming to debrief her after her assignment. The timing was a miracle of fate. The man walked straight up to Elena, ignoring everyone else, and saluted her with quiet respect. Agent Rivera, he said, using her formal title. Good to see you. Ready for the debrief? Gasps spread again through the crowd, louder than before. Karen staggered back, her hand clutching her sunglasses as though they could shield her from the humiliation pouring down. The truth wasn't just undeniable, it was standing in front of her. Breathing. Speaking. Wearing the authority she had mocked. Elena turned back to Karen one last time. Her voice was calm, almost gentle, but it carried the weight of justice. You accused me of lying. You tried to humiliate me in front of my neighbors. Now the truth is plain. I am not the fraud here. And with that, she walked away, her colleague at her side, leaving Karen standing in the middle of the street, silenced, exposed, and shaking as the neighbors whispered around her. Karen's mouth worked like she was trying to form a defense, but no sound came out. The neighbors' whispers grew into a chorus, a tide she couldn't control. For years, she had thrived on intimidation, on making people doubt themselves, on twisting half-truths until others bent under her weight. But now the script was gone. No trick, no lie, no shrill tone could compete with the stark reality of a federal ID gleaming in the sunlight, witnessed by dozens of eyes. She had picked the wrong target, and for the first time, everyone knew it. The government sedan remained parked at the curb, its door still open. Elena's colleague lingered just long enough to let the presence of authority sink in, then excused himself with a curt nod. We'll finish this later. Agent Rivera, he said, and the neighbors gasped again at the formal address. When he left, silence fell over the street, broken only by the sound of Karen's shallow breathing. She adjusted her sunglasses with trembling fingers, muttering, It's still suspicious. We need verification. But her voice had no power anymore. It cracked like brittle glass. That was when the squad car arrived, the one Karen had summoned with her theatrical 911 call. The two officers stepped out, their hands resting casually on their belts. Karen rushed to them as though salvation had finally come. pointing wildly at my wife. That's her. She's pretending to be an officer. Arrest her now before she hurts someone. She nearly tripped in her haste, her words spilling fast and desperate. The officers didn't move toward Elena. Instead, they asked her calmly, "Ma'am, may we see your identification?" Elena handed over her credentials with quiet grace. The officers studied them carefully, their eyes narrowing as they confirmed the seal. The hologram. The unmistakable legitimacy. One officer glanced up at Karen, his face stony. "These are real. She's federal." The statement landed like a hammer blow. Karen stumbled backward, clutching at air as though the words had knocked the wind from her lungs. The officer's voice grew colder. "Ma'am, filing a false police report is a criminal offense. Do you understand what you've done?" The color drained from Karen's face. Her mouth opened, but nothing coherent came out, just stammers and gasps. Around her, the neighbors murmured louder, some shaking their heads, others recording every second on their phones. The empire she had built on fear and bluster was crumbling before her eyes, and the cameras made sure it would never be forgotten. Elena didn't move closer. She didn't need to. She stood tall, calm, the very image of quiet authority, while Karen unraveled. My chest swelled with pride, though I stayed silent, letting the spectacle speak for itself. This wasn't about revenge, Anna Maria. It was about truth finally breaking through years of lies. One officer asked if Elena wanted to press charges. She looked at Karen, who was trembling, her sunglasses slipping down her nose, her body shaking with the weight of humiliation. For a long moment, Elena said nothing. Then she shook her head softly. "Not today," she said. "The community has seen enough. Sometimes exposure is punishment enough." The crowd reacted with a mixture of approval and surprise. Some clapped, others nodded, and a few whispered that Elena was showing mercy where none was deserved. Karen, however, couldn't leave it at that. Even with her power shattered, she tried to salvage scraps of dignity. I was just protecting everyone," she muttered weakly. "I didn't know. I couldn't know. How was I supposed to?" Her excuses fizzled under the weight of the stares around her. No one rushed to her defense. No one nodded in agreement. The silence of her so-called supporters was louder than any condemnation. Then came the unexpected twist. From the edge of the crowd, a woman I barely recognized stepped forward. Margaret, Karen's former vice president on the HOA board. She had always hovered behind Karen, nodding along, enforcing rules with a quieter cruelty. But now her face was pale, her lips tight. She raised her voice for the first time in public, saying, "She told us to target you. All of you. She said it was the only way to keep control. She even made us believe if we didn't back her, we'd face fines ourselves." The gasps that followed shook the street. Neighbors turned their eyes back to Karen, whose body seemed to shrink, collapsing in on itself under the weight of betrayal. Margaret's confession unleashed a flood. Others came forward, 2 stories of intimidation, of letters slipped under doors, of threats whispered in meetings. The officers listened, taking notes, while Karen's empire of fear dissolved in real time. Each testimony was another stone added to the burden crushing her. By the time it ended, she wasn't the queen of the neighborhood anymore. She was just a trembling figure, exposed for all to see. The officers escorted her to their cruiser, not in handcuffs. Not yet, but with a warning that charges were being considered. The neighbors didn't cheer. They didn't jeer. They simply watched her go, their faces a mix of relief and exhaustion. as though a storm had finally passed. And when the car disappeared down the road, the silence broke into something else, a collective exhale. A sense of freedom none of us had realized we'd been missing until that moment. Elena turned to the neighbors, her voice softer now. Authority isn't about how loud you shout or how many threats you make. It's about truth, responsibility, and service. Don't let fear trick you into forgetting that. Her words sank deep. I saw heads nodding, eyes shining, shoulders straightening. For the first time, the community seemed to stand taller, no longer under the shadow of Karen's domination. That night, as we sat on our porch with the groceries finally put away, neighbors stopped by one. Some came to apologize for believing Karen's lies, others to thank Elena for her strength. A few brought pies, casseroles, even flowers, a symbol that something new was blooming in place of fear. Karen's downfall wasn't just hers alone. It was the breaking of a spell that had gripped the whole street. And though she would no doubt face further consequences in court and beyond, the real victory was here, in the laughter of children playing freely, in the neighbors speaking without glancing nervously over their shoulders, in the warmth of a community finally reclaiming itself. Sometimes I think back to the moment Karen pointed her finger and accused Elena of being a fraud. The irony is sharp. The loudest accuser was the biggest liar of all. And when truth walked into the light, her power evaporated like mist in the sun. So I ask you, do you think Mercy was the right choice that day? Or should Karen have faced the full force of the law for every false report and every act of intimidation she carried out?